6 miles on Friday morning.
Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper sycamore tree. Dream a little dreamer.
Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at Rosie and we're going to be changing the anti-roll bar drop links. These connect the lower suspension arms to the anti-roll bar so that it can do its job. And at the moment on Rosie, it's not doing its job because look at the old ones. They're rusted, they're perished and they're worn. Believe it or not, these are the only tools you really need, as well as a torque wrench to replace the anti-roll bar drop link. So we're going to start off by making the vehicle safe by putting the handbrake on. That way it won't roll away while we're trying to jack it up. And now we can come around to the side that we're going to start with, and here's your jacking point. It changes on vehicle to vehicle, so be sure to read your owner's manual. But for MGZR and Rover 25, this is where you do it from.
Breezes seem to whisper.
Trolley jacks are only supposed to be used to lift the vehicle, not to hold the weight of the car. So what we'll do is we'll place an axle stand underneath the chassis rail and lower the car onto that to hold it whilst we work on it. So now we've got the vehicle raised up and I've turned the steering slightly to the right hand side. We can easily access the left hand side drop link. As you can see here, it's held on by two bolts. One of these has a nut on the other side. One of them goes straight into the lower control arm. So now with our two spanners, we put the 13mm onto the head of the bolt and we take our 15mm and we use that to undo the nut. The reason that we have the 13mm as it is, and one of my reasons for using these nice long spanners, is as I turn it round and I put my ratchet end of the spanner on so I can undo the nut quicker, the long 13mm will rotate up with the bolt until it hits the chassis and then it will hold it in place while I undo the nut. So now we have the nut off of the bolt at the top of the drop link, but we can't get the bolt out easily until we take our lever bar, our pry bar, and we gently push down on the anti-roll bar here, levering against the subframe. We also of course need to undo and remove the 13mm bolt that holds the drop link to the lower arm. So now the drop link's removed, we have two bolts here and they're two different bolts, so we need to remember which one goes where. The longer bolt, which has the nut, goes through the anti-roll bar and into the drop link at the top. The shorter bolt with the washer goes through the drop link and into the lower arm at the bottom of the drop link. Because they're different lengths, it's important to use the right one in the right place. So now we need to take our old drop link and compare it with our new one to make sure that we've been supplied with the correct one. It's also a good time to show you the difference between a good drop link and a bad one. So as you can see, the rubber here on this very rusty drop link has completely perished and has those tears around the centre pin that the bolt goes through. Once that happens, the centre pin and the rubber bushing will move slightly within the metal housing of the drop link, so you will have movement before it engages the anti-roll bar. Here on the new one, you can see that the rubber and the metal pin are all in great condition. What we need to do next is take our drop link with our 13mm bolt, the shorter one with the washer on it, and what we need to do is thread it in by hand. We do this first by hand, not with a tool, so that we don't cross thread it and need a new lower arm afterwards. So now we can take our spanner after we've done the first few turns and we can pinch it down. We don't need to do it up super tight yet. You'll know when it's done because the anti-roll bar drop link will come round and touch up against the anti-roll bar. So now it's time to do the top bolt, the one with the nut. And as you probably saw, it didn't line up with the bolt holes. So what we need to do is take our lever bar, our pry bar, insert it above the anti-roll bar and underneath the subframe. Now as you can see here, when I gently push down on it, it will come down and the bolt hole should line up. Just be careful when you push down that you've got the pry bar in a steady place so it doesn't slip and go left or right. Unfortunately, I needed two hands for this part, so I couldn't film. But as you can see, I've got the top bolt through, which is holding everything in place. I just need to get the nut and put that onto it and then do it up. So let's get that done, and then we can lower the vehicle down and make sure everything's tight. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our 2 spanners again, same as last time. 13mm goes onto the head of the bolt, and the 15mm goes on to the nut. Now this time we're going to be turning it the other way. We're going to be taking the end of the spanner and pushing down towards the floor. So once that happens, the bolt and the nut will turn as one until the 13mm spanner hits against the anti-roll bar, and that will hold it in place whilst we do up the nut. As you can see here, it comes down, touches, and there we go. It's holding the other side for us, and you can do this one-handed. So now, as everything's in place, we can get these bolts nice and tight, and then once the weight of the vehicle's on the car, we can check that they're tight enough and torqued to spec. So we'll get this one done, and then we'll take our 13mm and we'll put it onto the bottom bolt, and we'll finish tightening that one up. Because the reason we left it a little bit loose was just so that we had the movement there, so that when we brought the anti-roll bar down, we could adjust the angle of the drop link to get the bolt through. Take your jack, put it back where it was before to lift the vehicle back onto the jacking point, raise the car up just an inch or two, and pull that axle stand out. Then we can lower the car right down to the floor, and we can make sure, once the weight of the vehicle's onto the suspension, we can make sure that those bolts are tight. Don't forget though, with all suspension and brake parts, it's recommended to change both sides as a pair. So, Rosie's back on the floor. Let's grab our spanners. We've left ourselves a little bit of room by having the steering turned and not having the car stupidly low. So what we'll do is we'll get the 15mm, we'll put it onto the nut on the top, we'll make sure that's nice and tight, and then we'll take our 13mm and we'll put that onto the bolt at the bottom, and we'll make sure that's nice and tight as well. And there we go. Brand new drop link fitted. Repeat the same on the other side, the process is identical. You might find sometimes on different cars that you struggle for room on one side compared to the other, but the process is always the same. And specifically, that's how you do the anti-roll bar drop links on an MG ZR or a Rover 25. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, let me know by leaving a like. You can also leave any questions you've got in the comments. It would be great if you'd consider subscribing. Hopefully I'll see you next time.